I'm the host of the show that features entrepreneurs, leaders, and other executives who have had really fascinating stories, whether that's coming up through the ranks with new businesses they founded to years in the corporate world, or even just adventures around the world, whether it's summiting mountains or being in bands, anything out there. People have got kind of wild stories. We like to have them here on their ship. And this week, we have a great new guest called John Holm. John is the co-founder of Calendar.com. He's the co-founder of Influence.co. He's, in his own words, been starting companies since he was even in high school. He's also had to be a very prolific writer. He writes for Forbes and Inc.com weekly, and he contributes to publications like the Harvard Business Review, Lifehack, and Mashable, amongst others, all of which I happen to read on a side note. And he's also the author of a book called Top of Mind, which was actually rated one of the best business books of the year when it was released. So he's done a lot. He's been a lot. He continues to do a lot today, and he's done a lot through his career over the years. And he started at a very young age. And so one of the things that he and I thought would be really fun to chat about with the audience for OhShip is what it means to be a young leader. Whether that's starting off at a young age, or the challenges that you may see coming up through the ranks, but how you can build success and any maybe of the lessons that he's learned along the way. Also this week, when you're tuning in, feel free to ask questions. We're either asking them in chat or in any of the different platforms we're streaming in. Ask away, and John and I will do our best to try and answer those questions for you directly. And with that, welcome to another week of OhShip. John, welcome to the show. So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, you're actually one of the few guests I've had on that I haven't got a long-standing journey with. I'm very thankful that another OhShipShow guest was willing to introduce us. So I'm actually getting to know you along with our audience today, which I think is actually great fun. I've mentioned earlier that I hope I was a suitable hype man for you, because you've had some really great successes in your career so far. But it'd be really helpful, I think, if you told our audience a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so I started pretty early. Like I told you before we got started, I started in third grade, actually with a lunch brokerage. I was, fell upon an opportunity to talk my friends into getting their parents to put Twinkies or Ho-Hos over Gushers or whatever. Actually, Gushers were pretty prime back there. So I got a lunch brokerage where I would talk kids into packing certain things, because I knew that you could sell them to other grades for a higher value. So that's when I started, and then
I know that in itself sounds really fancy when you've got something and you're a kid and you call it. It's not that you weren't just selling lunch stuff. It was like, no, it was a lunch brokerage. So,
yes.
very serious sounding operation you had at 13 or whatever it was.
It's third grade. I was like, I look at my daughter who's 8 right now, and I'm like, and she's in third grade, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I can't imagine her doing that right now. But yeah, I mean, I think that I always had that spirit. My mom was very big on like breaking down barriers. So I was always like going door to door selling things. And so at an early age, I just created this natural, just proactive and perseverance in me. And so I think it started pretty young. And then my first real business was when I was 19, and it actually came a little more from tragedy, where I had a friend, he was murdered at a party we were at. He tried to break a fight, and I tried to get out of that kind of depression, and ended up saving money and working to raise kind of money so I could buy a house with another friend. So we ended up buying a house, flipping it. I took that money. I think we went to like 30 something banks before the 34th bank in Farmington, Missouri, lent us money. And then I flipped that, bought 2 more myself, flipped those, bought 2 more, and then ended up having a student housing company when I was 19 and throughout college. So as I met new friends in college, I would end up renting to them, as a landlord, and then ended up.
Wild.
Yeah.
Do you still maintain a bunch of properties now out of interest?
I still own the first four as kind of a meaningful remembering of, starting out as an entrepreneur. I should have probably sold them, but for me, the nostalgia of saying, hey, this is, where I started, and, the reminders of going in and cleaning toilets and doing things. It's like, you're never above things as an entrepreneur. And I like that reminder.
You're
Um,
here.
yeah. So, and then I was fortunate to meet Kelsey Meyer and Brent Beshore while I was kind of doing this. We ended up starting, and it was at an entrepreneurial event. We ended up starting Influence and Co together. And that company ended up growing to over 100 people, largest creator and distributor of expert content media. In 2018, I ended up selling that, and so ended up getting acquired. And then I ended up partnering with a guy named John Rampton, who owns Do.com and was an entrepreneur himself. And we've kind of combined forces to have a holding company that our kind of bread and butter is, and what our strength is. And this, as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to understand what you're best at. And what we ended up being best at together was helping people own their industry through the combination of thought leadership content, PR and influencer marketing, and then SEO. So you're basically sourcing content, getting it talked about, and then getting it to show up for search. So then we started a company that does that, that has service clients, but then we also have an investment arm where we invest in companies like Gab Wireless, Appointment.com, Calendar.com, so that we use our super strength as an entrepreneur to basically service clients, and then at the same time have an investment arm, and that's kind of the journey.
Is it like by the way, so much to unpack there. Thank God we got a whole show to talk about this. But is the investing you do, is it like a full blown, like, like small angel fund, or is it just like is it more like you think about like the private investing like you and your partners do?
Well, it just depends. Sometimes we're putting cash in. Like, ultimately, what we look for is what is our unique strength with, helping people own their industry. So organic growth on, digital traffic and building credibility online. So we look at those companies and we're like, okay, where can we really make a difference? If M&M's came to us and was like, hey, by the way, we want you to invest in M&M's, I'd be like, no, like, because our super strength doesn't help M&M's, even though I love M&M's, they're delicious. But at the same time,
I'll eat them. I just don't know if I'll invest in them.
yeah, I'm a great customer. And so, but from the standpoint of what we're uniquely equipped to do, it's ultimately kind of what I described there. And so then we look at that and we say, great. So sometimes they're need an addition, and sometimes they don't need capital and they just need the service. So then we'll do a combination of, equity or debt and service fees. Sometimes we'll do just service fees. Other times we'll do, cash, because they, need the cash in addition to having a service fee paid back over time. So we do recoup that money. So it really depends on the deal structures. Things change, and it really just depends on what I try to take a step back and say, what are the biggest needs of this company right now, and how can you fulfill those? And so sometimes it is where we're like, we just wrote a check recently for $100,000 to invest in somebody, but we're also getting a service fee back of $10,000-$15,000 a month. So we will recoup our investment, but the company's getting the service of relevance over the next 6-7 months for that investment. So it really just depends on the situation, and what we just try to do is match up the right fit for what the company needs. And sometimes they don't want the equity or debt deal, and then it's just like, hey, here's a service fee we're happy with, and we start with that.
Hey, out of interest, Influencer Code, does that own the domain name influence.com out of interest? I noticed you've got some great domain names, so I'm intrigued.
No. As crazy as it was, we were on kind of a path already with the current domain, or with the domain we had, and we did look at influence.com and influence.co. Ended up passing on them at the time. Over time, we maybe would have acquired them. It's hard to tell, but I'm a big believer of, if you want to own an industry, get a solid domain, and that's why you see us having things like Relevance, Calendar, Appointment. It's the legit domains. So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if for any of the other entrepreneurs out there or marketers, just how important do you think these big, singular noun kind of domain names or adjective kind of domain names are? I mean, do you think, what do you think is the best part, that they're so memorable?
Well, no, it's a digital strategy where you're going to rank better on organic traffic if you have a solid domain. People naturally go to higher domains. It's more credible. It helps when you're doing a content strategy. So like when we're putting together a content strategy, a domain, a lot of times is a part of that. And so, calendar.com is like, if you look right now, we rank number 4 for the term when you just type in calendar. So like there's like 4 million searches a month of that. And if we didn't have the actual domain, that would have been a little bit harder. So I think that, ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur or a leader that wants to own an industry, you have to look at the different things that encompass that. Now, granted, if a domain is just so expensive and doesn't make sense, you just got to weigh that, where there's some companies we invest in where we say, hey, this domain is fine. Don't worry about that. We're not going to spend $2 million on, whatever, I don't know, dirtmotorcycles.com. I don't know. I just threw that out there, but we're not going to spend that much, on that. So I think that you have to look at it very seriously. And if it's obtainable and you can, do it, then definitely do it. It will pay off in the long run and you'll like owning that domain. But yeah, you have to look at it with every situation. And a lot of times we win and we get the one we want.
I normally would not. I wouldn't normally like to put you on the spot, but I have to ask. You can say I can't disclose that, obviously. Can you tell me what the most you've ever paid for a domain is? Because these are serious domains you guys have got some out there. I think people don't understand how valuable some of these things can be. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you don't disclose the name on one, but I'd be interested to see if you could share, like, how big some of these domains might be.
Well, we actually, I mean, like my business partner is a savant at finding deals, and so he's very good. Like, I'm not joking. Something will be worth like 30 million, and he'll offer like 100,000. It's like funny how confidently he goes into negotiating.
So it doesn't matter how much you paid for them; it's how much they're worth, and you got some real gems out there. I'd love to see that full list one day.
But to answer your question straight out, the most we've ever paid is 2 million, like from a value standpoint.
That's serious money.
Yeah.
That's great. Very exciting. So let's go back in time a little bit, because I think it's very easy to get caught up on some of the things you're doing now. Again, I do want to hear more about some of the more recent businesses, but I want to go back in time a little bit. And so moving past the lunch the lunch brokerage and even some of the real estate stuff that you were doing, let's kind of maybe focus more on like the software and professional services and technology stuff that you've been doing. You're a young guy. You were obviously even younger back then. What was it like to be were you always the CEO? I mean, did you have different roles within business? I'd love to know what you felt like it was like to be kind of a young leader out there. In terms of, do you feel people took you seriously, and how did that impact how you managed other people or interacted with other people? I just like to understand a little bit what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, and really, the short answer is no. We weren't. I wasn't taken seriously. I remember going into a meeting with a large brand when I was like 24, 25, and I remember, I'm not joking. They were like, "Look at this little young whippersnapper." That's what I was called, and I was like, "I don't know."
They literally called you a whippersnapper. Damn,
whippersnapper. But even they made comments on the side. They're like, and you could tell that there's trust barriers all the time. Right now, we have more trust barriers than we ever have. If you look at even just like the way government is trusted, it was like in the 60s or 70s, it was like 70%. Now it's down to like 15%. And I think that's involved media with a lot of different things. And so I think trust has become a bigger issue. But even when I was young, so I'm 37 right now. And so back when we were getting started, I mean, it was a huge barrier. Like my co-founder was a woman. There was obviously trust barriers with her being a young woman at the time. There's was trust barriers with me being young. There's all these things that have barriers. It can be race, gender. It can be just perception of how someone's dressed. And so for me, there's massive barriers that you deal with as a young entrepreneur. But if you're able to overcome them by building enough, investing in your own brand and doing things, then it becomes this big strength. And so and that's why we started Influence Co. at the time, is that we had these barriers. And I mean, the initial idea was Brent, our third partner, and he basically was like, "Man, this sucks. Like, I'm going in to do large deals, and there's this barrier in being a young leader." But as we used and really, like with Relevance, what we do is like we love that kind of opportunity, because then once you there's a young client right now that's in his early 20s. Once you get them the right press placements, the right things going on with them, then everybody looks at it as a huge, impressive thing where it's like, wow, look at what this person has done at a young age. And it helps you create deals because you almost are over this hump where not many people get at a young age. And they're like, wow, that's somebody who is a rising star. You want to deal with them. And so my advice there would be highly invest in your brand. If I could go back, there's two things I would do better. Well, three things. I would get rid of my ego at a young age, and I would really be like, always try and be better no matter what, and don't think you know it all. Two, just really focus on surrounding yourself with amazing team members, because your team is really what drives leadership, in my opinion. Is that if you have a great team, it enhances how you can be as a leader. So so focus on that. And then the last thing was probably a more important one. The most important is investing in your brand significantly, because whether you have a pandemic, whether you have anything going on, if you invest in yourself, your brand, and you have credible, there's going to be opportunities. I don't care if it's being employed by somebody, if something hits the fan. I don't care if it's a partnership as an entrepreneur. The investment in your own brand is so massive, and that's why I was so attracted to that. That's why we built a company around it, and that's why I'm still involved in companies that invest in thought leadership within companies.
Yeah, one of the things I love when talking about investing in a brand is maybe making this a little bit more quantifiable for people. And so one of the ideas that I always like to communicate is this idea: if you think about every interaction you have with people, and whether that is a potential customer, maybe it's even someone you're trying to hire. And I'm gonna kind of apply some kind of math logic to this, but think about conversion rate. Effectively, whether you are doing a new business deal, how many of those people, the introduction you make, can you convert into customers? How many people, if you're trying to hire, can you convince to trust? Because this really comes down to trust. I mean, I think you nailed it. And if you have these kind of disadvantages, which can be a whole number of different things based on preconceptions that people have in society, but one of them is certainly around age, frankly, whether being too old or too young, unfortunately. Investing in your brand chips away at those barriers. And so when people go, well, I don't, let's say they're talking about a company, like your current business, and obviously you're not doing that for free. But when people go out there and they say, well, why should I invest $5,000, $10,000, whatever a month in something like this to establish credibility? Is because what is the cost, the opportunity cost that's lost if you're going into all these different meetings and all these different interactions with people? You only get one shot at these things, and if you're losing them because the trust isn't there, then the investment in the brand is so imperative. Um, there was a lot to unpack in what you talked about earlier. One of the ones I thought was interesting was about basically, there's one side of this of how you interact with other people. So you're talking about external people that you had to interact with as a young leader, but there's another side of this that I think is about dealing with internal people. So what did your team look like? So when you were your young CEO, help me visualize this. Was most of the team the same age or younger, or did you have people that worked for you that were older than you? And if so, is there any do you think there's any guidance to kind of being a leader where you've got staff and team members that may be older or significantly older than you, and maybe how that impacts your management style at all?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when my first larger company, I mean, it was all women. I mean, our first 5 employees around me were women, so I was the sole guy initially. So that was kind of the breakdown. Age, some were young, there was maybe one or two that's close to 30, but ultimately, for me, I'm a very big fan of just be hyper focused on getting the right people there, like hyper focused on like what's important to you. So for me, the willingness to learn, so because like if you have the willingness to learn, you can always teach someone a certain level of intelligence where, there's common sense and can catch with that. They want to be a good teammate, so those are the things. And so if you look at all those people, I really didn't care what age they were. I didn't care, gender or anything. And I think those people really encompass that. And I think that's what sets a company up for success a lot of times. And with relevance, my president over there at that company said something to me that was a huge compliment. They said one of John's strengths is his ability to bring the right people together, and he's almost a collector of talent and people. And I almost look at it like a chessboard. I don't know if you play chess, but For
You? I
me,
love a good game of chess.
yeah, so for me, it's hard to win when you don't have any bishops or rooks, and you or like and you don't have the right pieces on the board. You need kind of like I'm trying to save this knight, or this this rook just so I can protect the king or this. And I think it's the same thing with a business is that you need these people. And with different like as funny as it is, like people talk about politics and how it destroys relationships. I mean, if you look at my breakdown, I have extreme difference. Like, I have a huge conservative leader, I have a huge liberal leader, I have one that's very religious, one that's very not religious. And I think that for me, I like bringing together people in a way that have different views, different skill sets, and then creating an environment where they can thrive, feel respected and open. And so that was very important to me. With any company I start, is that if I hire all people like me, we're going to fail. I have certain strengths. Like, I almost look at it as like Mario. I don't know if you ever play Mario games, but I'm kind of like Bowser, where Bowser's always the power one. That's like a free, like he like breaks through barriers, and so
Yeah,
that's me. If we have 10 Bowsers, we're gonna fail because it's just a bunch
yeah,
of
yeah,
demolishing things. But that's why I need a Luigi. That's why I need
yeah.
Peach. That's why I need all these characters to create a team that ultimately can thrive the most. And I look for those characters. And so for me, it's hyper focused on the chessboard and who we need the most, what skill sets, what we're deficient at, what's our weakest link, and how do I fill that gap with the right talent.
I want it on record. I'm Yoshi. Uh, so,
I feel bad.
the
Yoshi's my favorite character too. How did I leave
Me
him
too, man. Can never
out?
go wrong with little Yoshi. So yeah, big. You walked into a very friendly gamer environment here. Interesting question for you. So you like bringing these diverse teams together. You see that as a source of your strength. Um, how do you deal with situations then where maybe people that you bring into the group are they don't look at the world, maybe it's good that they don't look at the world that you do, but they don't understand how to communicate with others with that same open-mindedness. Do you do you it's like you've got these diverse skill sets or diverse personalities, but how do you make sure that basically you're good at playing nice with everyone, I guess is my nice way of saying it. How can you make sure that everyone is good at playing nice with each other? Does it make
we got
sense?
Yeah, you got to lead by example. And like, for
Mm,
example, admitting when I'm wrong. A lot of leaders don't want to do that. I didn't want to do that as a young leader. I thought that it showed weakness to admit when you're wrong. Also, idea bias. When it was my idea as a young leader, I was like, well, this is the best. By the way, I'm cracking up at the Wario all day comment over here. But that's awesome. But like, sorry, I lost my train of thought there with that. But ultimately, like when I'm putting together, like the bottom line is like when I'm putting together a team that I want to get along, I have to lead by example. So that's a
mhm.
key thing, is that admitting. And what it does that mean? Admitting when I'm wrong, being thoughtful about to others. So like if they're like one of my interns the other day was just struggling because she's having a lot of stuff thrown at her. I walked in there and I said, "Hey, here's $100 gift card. I want you to go out and just tomorrow spend the morning or spend the afternoon with friends, enjoying, disconnect from work. And I want you to come back recharged. If you're not recharged, let me know." But three people saw that, and I think that that's like a lead by example. Thoughtfulness, being self-aware when you make a mistake is saying, "Hey," instead of saying "my bad." This is one of my employees that said it to me in the past, is like, when you say "my bad," it doesn't really, it's come off as an apology. It's like something you just brush over. So saying like, "Hey, I'm sorry, that was my mistake. I should have been better. This is what I can be better at." Those are things that are important to lead and to show. And as funny as it is, once you kind of you create that environment, people are okay with it, and they're not as opinionated. They're not as defensive. They're not as like, I think people inherently want to be good, but then a lot of times there's an environment where they're just not. And honestly, if they're not good, then get rid of them. They shouldn't be a part of your team.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
good.
but this. I think this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. At the end of the day, this still comes back to being a trust thing,
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is, if when you apologize sincerely and acknowledge, failures or mistakes, and it's not brushed off, even though you may have made a mistake, I actually think it establishes a higher level of trust with people, because people can see that you're sincere, and where they might, go, hey, look, the mistakes have been made. They're going to trust you more inherently as a leader, and as another human being. And what is the power of that? A lot of times when I think about even retention and how you try and keep people within your team, a huge chunk of why people move on from one company to another, in my opinion, is that they stop trusting that their leader has their best interests at heart, or they don't trust that that they're going to continue to be invested in, or that they're a valued member of the team. And so you just cannot underwrite the value of trust at all levels, of your brand. And that brand that you talked about a second ago, it's not just the outward facing brand that you can kind of create through thought leadership and things like that, but it's the accumulation of all those interactions that you have with your team, in your day-to-day interactions with them. So
Yeah, and another the key thing I forgot is it just encourage. Like I have kind of a rule is that if you're going to come to me and complain about someone, my first thing is, did you talk to them first? Did you pull them aside, directly try and talk? Because gossip and going above people's head is a major way to destroy trust within in an organization. So that's my first question. Now, granted, if somebody's like, hey, by the way, now this hasn't happened here, but if somebody was like, hey, there's sexual harassment, yes, that is something I seriously want you to come to me, and and we'll deal with that very directly. But if it's a challenge of a difference of opinions and or strategy or a process, my first question is always, did you go to that person and talk with them? Now, if they say yes and they were super defensive, that's something that we can deal with. My thing here is that when someone gives you feedback, whatever, you listen, you understand, you try and take their opinion into consideration. If you don't agree with them, then you give them, hey, this is why. Here's my data. Here's my support behind this, or through experience, or that. But that's my first thing, is that somebody comes to me to complain, I say, did you talk to this person directly? And if they say no, I say, hey, do you mind, or do you feel comfortable with having that conversation? And a lot of times they say, well, yeah. And I said, okay, could you do that? And then if there's any problems, loop me in. So.
I'm going to change gears a little bit. So again, we've discussed the fact that you've had numerous ventures throughout your career. What is the hardest bit? What was the most challenging business to grow and build, and why?
They all have different challenges. Like I don't like the service company. It had challenges where you were heavy human capital, where you've got a lot of people. We expanded different offices, that had its own challenges. I think that with calendar, the technology, going from a service business to a tech company, it's a different set of challenges. Where when you're someone like, I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer, so when you're trying to get things done and features done, it's very hard to tell people what to do when you don't speak their language sometimes, and so you have to respect that. And so that was challenging for me. Understanding conversions on a tech company as compared to a service company was difficult for me. So now calendar, we're starting to see conversions happening a lot more, and the product's on the right path where people are enjoying the product. But getting there, it was a struggle in the past to get there. But now that we're there, it's like I feel better. But at the time, it was hard. And
How many
so
years have you been building that product now?
that's been about 3 years. So it was right after I left ICO. And it had, and Rampton actually founded that one, my business partner, a little before I kind of got involved. And so, it takes time, and you have to be patient, and you have to keep trying and try and persevere through those barriers. And I think that there's good books out there that make you embrace failure a little more, like Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, and a lot of those common ones that are that show you, like Nike. If you read that book, almost went under so many times. I mean, he almost went to jail. If you read that, and I'm not saying you should do things to almost go to jail, but for me, it's starting to have confidence in yourself. And what I tell people is do your best, educate yourself the most you can. Work work hard to accomplish these things. If you fail, that's okay. It's funny is that some of the best entrepreneurs fail 4 or 5 times before they have their big win. So I would just say is that if you keep those things in place, where you have that mental strength, you're going to be successful at some time. Even if you fail as an entrepreneur, and you join someone else like me as a what I call entrepreneur, you can still be extremely successful as an entrepreneur. But once again, you still have to have that mindset where you're like, hey, like I'm going to do my best. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to talk to people and learn how to handle situations the best I can. And and create a network that you can, over time, like my network's massive now, but as a leader when I was 20, it wasn't big. But nowadays, if I need something, a lot of times I have the resources because I've spent 17, plus years working on engaging people that, I try to help out as much as possible so that when I do need help, I have it.
Out of interest, who would you pop quiz? Who would you trust more? Someone, you know, entrepreneur, kind of 5 years into their career that's never failed before, or an entrepreneur who's maybe failed a couple times and had some success as well.
Just as situational. I have to know both
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
The off the cuff answer is just the person is failed several times and seen some success. If they've never seen success, I would be a little
you're a little
concerned.
nervous. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I would be concerned because a lot of times there's a reason for if you've never seen success, and
yeah.
I'd want to dive into that. A lot of times they just don't have the right resources or support. Other
Mhm.
times they're just an asshole, and they just don't have people to support. So that would concern me. So for me, it's like it's a situational analysis. I have a friend in the military that always says, "What's the essay?" So what's your situational analysis in this case? So with questions like that, I would say that that's my off the cuff answer. However, it really depends on the people behind those two things and understanding that failure could have been a really good reason. If you can figure that out and support that in a way, then yeah, I think that there's trust there. With the one that, and I've also seen, an entrepreneur that has success just because of pure luck. Honestly, it's like it's pure luck, timing, right time, right, and so you got to dive into that a little more and get the right. I always say, get as much data and information as you can on the situational analysis part of it, and you can make a decision on which one you should trust more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one there. I've said to people in the past, I think I've had my fair share of luck in my career. I've also had my fair share of lack of luck, or being in the wrong time, wrong place, or being too early. But I've also had people respond to me that, kind of luck is what you make of it, and there's no such thing as luck. What's your take on that?
Oh, I absolutely do think there's luck. That's a big part of it. But I think you can create your own luck as well. I think the more that you, so what I say about a company's success is there's all these factors that increase your luck. So it increases your chance of success. Having the right team and the right people, major part of it. Having I almost like I did a Venn diagram the other day in kind of a stream of consciousness thing where I
Mhm,
put one circle was a competitive advantage. So like a unique advantage, like with relevance, we have a competitive advantage because we have a ton of media connections to place articles and ways to do that. So clear competitive advantage. Also, another one is the opportunity in the industry. Where are there the people with the budgets to pay for it? Can you sell it to this? Like, can you get a sales process going? Because a lot of times, if you can get the sales process going, you can fill in operations behind it. So there's that. Then there's the passion behind actually, if you enjoy it and you like it and you're passionate about the business. If you can find that middle of the Venn diagram that encompasses each one of those, you increase your chance of
mhm,
success. And then other things that can contribute to that are your team in your network, and there's other kind of circles that overlap as well. And so what I try and tell people is that try and find as many of those circles overlapping in that middle as possible. And if you can find, that middle there and create it, then you're going to increase your chance of success significantly. Where
mhm,
instead of me saying it's a 95% failure rate, your failure rate probably goes to 40 or 50% as
mhm.
you get those things in place.
Uh, through this, you've mentioned your partners multiple times. Um, maybe not even specific to you, but assume having a partner is something that not to put words in your mouth, but assume you feel like having a partner is an important part to success. It seems like building great teams is something you're passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's also the journey going through it with someone is more meaningful than when you're doing it on your own a lot of times. And so for me, I like the journey and the experiences and the joking around of sharing experiences. Like last night, actually, we have a villa across the street that our company or that our family owns, and one of my friends was in town, who was our sixth employee at my last company, and we were joking around about old stories. And my new business partner from Salt Lake or Rampton happened to be in town, and we're joking around about some of the things that happened in year 2, year 3, and just that meaningful, banter. And like, that's very meaningful to me because, if I was sitting there by myself, one, it'd be weird if I was talking to myself, but two, it's something that it's an important part of life to share experiences with people. So I think that that's a key thing. Also, it's just, it increases your competitive advantage. I mean, Rampton, my business partner now, is one of the smartest people I know. And he's also one of the more resourceful people I know as well. And he also cares about people. Now, he's not perfect and I'm not perfect. We have our challenges that we have to work through, like any marriage. And that's what I would say is a partnership in business. A good one is very, very similar to a marriage. And it's consistently working, open feedback, open communication. But for me, it's very clear that enjoying the journey along the way with the partners that I've had. Kelsey was my one before, and she's a very kind, thoughtful person. We have our difference of opinions and strategies and things like that, but still very good person. And that those moments with her were very, meaningful to me. And then, with Rampton, it's fun to experience things and to have the fun kind of experiences where we can share the failures, the successes, and that for me that's important. And then also just having the resources and another person bounce ideas. I would say that a lot of times I have an idea that's maybe 80-70% formed, and then you need someone to be honest with you on like either this is a crap idea or hey, like you can probably change this, and you can get that 70% to about 90. Just being open and getting some really good feedback.
I'm intrigued. So first, I want to know what you think you bring into a partnership. Like I talk about superpowers a lot here on OhShip, and I'd love to kind of understand what you think your superpowers are. And then I'd be intrigued as a follow-up to that. I'd love to know what you think are the most important things you look for in a partner, a great partner, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely worthless. I don't know why they deal with me. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, not me.
I mean, I think that I will think outside the box, and I really care about people. And so I think that when you talk about leadership, you want to be a leader that people want to follow and that also care about their people, that want to enhance their lives. And so I think that when you look at that kind of philosophy, if you read my book, Top of Mind, I'm all about being helpful to people. If you can help people with their motivations, then they're going to help you in the future naturally. It just always comes back in some way. Even if it doesn't, I think that motivation and how you do business that way, it's a very powerful attribute. And so I think that my biggest strength is I consistently help people around me to try and enhance their lives, whether it be a partnership, whether it be an employee. And I think when people kind of want me on their team or want a partner, they're like, wow, okay, when Hall's around, he will figure out a way to look out for people and they will create opportunities where in reality, it's creating your own luck. So I would say that that's probably a super strength with this natural helpfulness. Like I have these processes, these things to nurture people. If you read the book Top of Mind, the whole idea is engaging people in different ways with content, with action, with human to human connection, so that you're on their mind at the right time in the right moments. So for me, when I look for a partner, and I have had not the best partners. I just don't want to, talk about that because, that's a bad karma or whatever. But what I would say is that, you want to have someone that has a line in general values and you want somebody that kind of has similar strategic efforts and vision. However, does complement. Like, so I'll give you an example. Rampton, we were asked this question in that conversation last night that I was talking about. And he kind of answered it and said, hey, well, Hall is somebody who, like, I trust his, kind of, vision and helpfulness and how he treats people around him. But then he does have strengths that complement mine where, some of my, things where he's very good at finding opportunities in different ways. I've become a little better at operations and setting things up for success, mainly because of my past business partner. I used to be like a Rampton and be very visionary, very like, oh, let's do this. I got this opportunity. This deal came in. And my last business partner was very operational, and she was like, dude, you're out of control. Like, we can't do this. And I got to learn what it was like to understand both sides of that kind of, and she helped me understand that. And so with this partnership, it allows me to translate kind of his efforts to the team without frustrating the team. because I understand his point of view, because I used to be him. And then I also understand the, Kelsey point of view, which, a lot of times that's who's translating to the team, the person who's leading operations and the manager there. So yeah, that's what I would say is like, I look for, general values that align, but then ways that we can complement each other to ultimately create a superpower together of a very strong operating team.
It's funny. I can't help but think that one of the other things that came through very clearly in what you just said was trust again became a big theme. It's like, and at least speaking for myself, if nothing else, um, I that's probably the number one quality I look for people that I've even taken. There may be multiple people I could partner with, and maybe there are smarter, more successful people, between some of the options. But I'll typically always take the one I trust the most. But maybe it's because I'm a bit of a paranoid guy. So your book was called is called Top of Mind. I think of that as the antithesis of the kind of classic what is it, out of sight, out of mind kind of thinking. And so when you're in a company, whether you're trying to be people aware of you in your industry, or you're even rising up through the corporate ranks, or you're even trying to build a network. You never want to be that person that's out of sight, out of mind of everyone else. And so, as we kind of come to near the end of OhShip, I'd love to see if you could just share, one or two of your favorite tips on how people can make sure they're top of mind.
Yeah, something that's funny is I was like, yeah, I was going to show you the book, but this is the Korean version, so I don't know how much that helps.
Hey, I'll take it. I think that's even cooler than the Korean version. Very cool.
I was like, oh, here's the book, and then people try and order the Korean version. It's like, man,
Read us a chapter. Come on.
it's like, yeah, good luck. It's actually really funny. The only words I know are John Hall. But the
Amazing. If you had busted out the Korean, I would have just been like, this is the most interesting man I've ever met.
Dang, I should have done that. Like now I'm going to prepare for that. And next time, if it ever comes up, I'm going to just start speaking like the only like 20 words in Korean I know, which I don't know any right now.
I
So I'll
lived
work
in
on that.
Shanghai for almost a year, and I was learning basic terrible Chinese, and I came back and had this big Christmas party at my house in Florida. And I said it was a New Year's party. And I said I'd like to give a quick speech. I said this is a parable that I learned in Shanghai, and I basically just started ordering stuff off a Chinese menu because the only thing I knew how to say in Chinese was how to order food and drinks and stuff. And finally, someone's like, I've been to China with you. You just ordered 2 glasses of water. I'm calling PS on this. For a good solid 10, 15 seconds, I think I had about 50 people completely impressed with my amazing Chinese parable that I was apparently telling.
You're more cultured than I was. I was actually just reading. It's like I'm trying to think if you can read it, but it does say there's two words. There's John Hall right there, and then there's CEO. So I do know how to read that. And then this part.
And you got top of mind. So boom, you've almost covered the whole cover of that Korean book. So
Uh,
so
so back,
what are your big tips, John?
Yeah, so I mean, an example that I would give, and this is a long-standing client that I really respect, and so just to disclose that he has been a client for a while, but he's a really good friend. His name's Eric Huberman, and he owns a company called Hawk Media. And something that I like, the advice that I love about him is that I remember when he was 4 people or 6 people. I mean, he's like 200 something or 300. They're a really large agency in LA called Hawk Media. That's great, but he was so like dedicated and saying, we want to own this industry. I'm so dedicated because I'm not trying to build some little company that goes out of business in a year. I want to own these things and these types of marketing. And what I really respect is like the commitment and the vision and the commitment to that vision. And so like if you just type, like, for example, they position their company as outsourced CMOs. They're like the best at being the outsourced CMO for different people. And you guys are like strategic in leadership. So you get it's like if you brand yourself as like, hey, we want to be a great leader in this area, and their branded term is outsource CMO. Type in outsource CMO. You see that there's ads where you'll see Hawk Media in a top ad. You'll see a Forbes article that was placed that has a feature talking about them. You'll see their site showing up in position 5 or 6 on it. So like that sort of commitment, it didn't just overnight happen. it is the commitment of the vision of saying like, I'm going to own this and persevere and keep at this with content and that's where the kind of top of mind aspect is that if you commit to that vision of owning an industry, you're going to start showing up all over the place, whether it's like, and content is one of the best ways to scale that. So if you have a good content strategy, people are going to see, like, there's so many people that are like you actually mentioned, as funny as it is, one of our things when you got on, you were like, man, you write a lot on LinkedIn. So I guarantee you're going to be reminded of my name and me because you're going to see that I say top of mind on LinkedIn. You're going to search things. Like the other day, somebody was searching an article about or leadership conferences. If you type in leadership conferences, there's an article. Oh, Hall wrote that. So like I pop up in all these ways where people are reminded that I exist. And also if we got connected or if I spoke at an event, they're reminded with that content. And so I would say like the one tip is that have this commitment to, I want to engage people. Like when I meet them in person, I'm gonna end the conversation with, how can I be helpful? How can I look out for your best interest? And try and, do that. And a lot of times you will, and a lot of times you won't. But I guarantee you're going to engage them. You're going to have a higher chance of engaging them in person, where they're like, oh, I like that person. They were looking out for me. And then when they see your content, they're reminded of that. Oh yeah, awesome person. Oh, sweet. Hall owns, or Hall, is involved in calendars. So I should, use this scheduling software. Oh, Hall's involved in Relevance, which does PR and thought leadership. I should use them. And so you're coming to mind when people have these biggest needs, these moments of vulnerability that happen where someone has this need and they're like, oh man, I want to own my industry. Who do I call? And that's why we get a lot of inbound opportunities. And I'm working a lot less on outbound and hustling and trying to just get people to talk to me these days because I have this natural inbound flow over the years from this top of mind mentality. So, in reality, it's that vision of committing to, here's how, what we want to be known for. Here's how I'm going to engage people in person through content. And then over time, I'm going to have this compounding effect that brings people to me more. And I have this magnet that attracts people to want to do business with me. And it becomes easier and easier. And then you get better opportunities. You start creating your own luck more.
It's awesome advice. And I have to ask, with all this, background you've got, these great insights, did you have some kind of like crazy mentor or something that helped you kind of develop throughout your career?
No, like, I mean, in reality, I think I mentioned this before when we were chatting, is that I've been fortunate to meet some of my idols, like Mark Cuban was one of his examples, where I met him several times and talked to him. I really like him. He's a great person. And we've done business with with his different companies, Tower e-bikes, paddleboards, love the companies that he's involved in. But I also realized at a young age where I didn't want to be him in general. And a lot of times you want to be your mentor. And what I've realized is that I want to surround myself with people that are all my mentors. So like my business partner is a mentor. My wife's a mentor to me. My kids, I can learn a ton from my kids. There's an example in one of my keynote speeches where I talk about how my 8-year-old daughter teaches me about how different people are and how they communicate, because I gave her my Timex watch, which I was super excited because it blew up indigo. And I was so excited for my kid to play with my Timex watch that I loved when I was an 8-year-old because it gets indigo and it glows blue. And then she looks at it and goes, call Grandma Hall. Daddy, this won't call Grandma Hall. Like, what? Are you serious? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And like, in a way, that's a mentorship, because you just have to be open to learning from all these people around you. And so for me, with my daughter, she teaches me, as like, man, like, she's excited about different things than I was a kid. She's a different person. She's being raised in a different generation. And I need to respect that and understand that. And so I think that the whole point of mentorship is learning and becoming better. And so a lot of times people direct it towards one person or one individual. And I think that it's the wrong way to do it. I think that in reality, you look at who's the best for that to learn from. And sometimes situations, somebody has dealt with that situation who's like an intern, who is someone who isn't the biggest leader in the world. And so I would say I'm very open to advice from different types of people and sources. And so I would say a lot of the people around me, and I surround myself with people that are almost all my mentors, combined, and it helps me make better decisions.
I love that. I was very lucky to, have a mentor, my father, growing up. But the reality is, I think like you, I also now look to a really diverse group of people to inspire me. And the reality is you can learn something from everybody if you're open to it. And you also mentioned earlier about kind of just dropping your ego, as you became a kind of a more mature, entrepreneur and leader. I also feel the same way, and I can't stress how important that is, because when you think you're the smartest guy in the room, then you're not really open or paying attention to everything else that people are saying around you. So I think this is a really great high note to end the show on. John, it was really, really great having you on the show. Had great engagement from our guests and audience members, whether they were watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, any of the different platforms we stream on. And I do also want to note, as of today, we have a new OhShipShow.com site out. If you get a chance, check it out. We've made it much, much easier for people to get to all the content for OhShip that you love. So you go to OhShip, it's very simple. And if you at OhShipShow.com, it's easy to quick link to any of our platforms, whether that is the video versions of our show across various social networks, or even the new audio versions of our show across various podcasting platforms. If you love our show, the best thing you can do to promote it and help support it is give us a like, subscribe on whatever platform you're on, or even share it on your social feeds. We appreciate it. This is just something we do for fun. It's great to connect with all these great leaders who are so appreciative of sharing their experiences with us and me and everyone who I know tunes in to OhShip every single week. So, John, thanks again for coming. It was really great to meet you on air, and we'll see you next week on OhShip.
Thanks for having me.